We walking to court today. Hoping I walk up out this bitch. If I don't, I ain't violated shit. Nowadays, you gotta watch some of the motherfuckers you do business with. Real shit. You know what I'm saying? You be going to with a motherfucker, you got something going on, and now all of a sudden they want to keep upping the price on you. Like, get your weak ass up out of here. Or, you know what I'm saying? Some excuses. You know, sometimes it don't matter that a motherfucker be out morning. They'll still be hating on you, Joe. You gotta pay attention.
Kevin Watson's murder has already been viewed nearly 2 million times on Facebook as he was killed in the middle of his Facebook Live. In that video, you can see him getting out of his car before hearing a single gunshot fired, happening mere blocks away from this police station here in South Austin.
Get into it with y'all, because y'all ain't got no respect. What's up, bro? What's up? Hell no!
Imagine watching someone live on Facebook, just a regular man, talking, minding his own business, and in the blink of an eye, you see him step out of his car, and then you hear the shot that ends his life. That's what happened to Kevin Tugg Watson in Chicago. He didn't know that pressing that Go Live button would capture his final moments on Earth. And the truth is, none of us were ready to see it either. Before we go any further, I need you to hear me on this. Too many stories like Tugg's get buried, pushed aside, and forgotten the moment the next headline comes along. Don't let that happen here. If you believe his life mattered, if you believe his story deserves to be remembered, then show it. Hit like, subscribe, and click that bell icon right now. Not just for this channel, Crime Bitz, but for every victim whose name might otherwise fade into silence. Because remembering is the least we can do. Now, who was Kevin Watson, really? Kevin wasn't just a man in a news story. He was 42 years old, a Chicago native, and to those who knew him, he was Tugg. That was the name people called with affection. He had family that loved him deeply, friends who described him as funny, caring, and someone who could light up a room just by walking into it. He wasn't perfect, nobody is, but he was loved. And in the end, that's what makes this story so hard to swallow. On August 14th, 2025, Kevin had gone about his day like anyone else. He had stopped by his cousin's job not long before, a small gesture that showed what kind of man he was. Always checking in, always keeping close to his people. That evening, he sat inside his car in a parking lot on the 5000 block of West Madison Street, right in the South Austin neighborhood. This wasn't deep in the night. It was just after 6, still daylight, life moving normally all around. But here's where everything changed. While Kevin was seated in his car, someone approached him. They weren't just passing by, they were trying to take something from him. Reports say it was an attempted snatch, a move that instantly turned tense. Kevin, being who he was, didn't just freeze. He stepped out of his car, probably trying to confront what was happening, probably thinking he had a moment to gain control. But that moment never came. A single gunshot rang out. The bullet struck him in the chest. And there, in front of everyone watching on Facebook Live, Kevin Tugg Watson fell. The live stream cut short, but the shockwaves didn't. Imagine being one of the people watching that video in real time. Maybe a friend, maybe a family member, maybe just someone scrolling who stumbled across his page. 1 second you see him alive, moving, breathing, and the next, silence. That silence doesn't just sit on the screen, it grabs your chest. For Kevin's family, that silence became their reality. His loved ones described the moment they found out as one of those phone calls you pray you'll never receive. His cousin, who had just seen him earlier, broke down, saying she couldn't believe it because he had been right there, smiling and alive just minutes before. His death wasn't some distant tragedy. It was painfully close. Kevin's life before that day paints a bigger picture of why this hit so hard. He wasn't some stranger to struggle. Like many men in Chicago, he grew up in an environment where violence was a shadow that followed you around, but he found ways to stand tall despite it. Friends called him a survivor, someone who knew how to navigate the streets without letting the streets define him completely. And when you've lived that long in a city that can eat you alive, making it to 42 is itself a badge of resilience. But Kevin wasn't just living for himself. He had kids who looked up to him, family who leaned on him. He was known for popping up at cookouts, for cracking jokes that would break up tension, for making sure people remembered to laugh even when life felt heavy. His presence was a reminder that even in a tough city, joy could still be found. And that's what made his final moments so unbearable. The idea that someone who had fought so hard to keep going, who had lived long enough to see past so many dangers, could be taken down in an instant over something as senseless as a snatch attempt. When the gun went off and Kevin fell, the chaos was immediate. People around the area heard it. Some ran, others froze. Police were called right away, and within minutes, officers were on the scene. He was rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital, but the damage was too severe. At just 42 years old, Kevin Watson was pronounced dead. The cruelest part? The world didn't just hear about it after the fact. They saw it. The internet carried his final breath across screens in real time. And once a video like that hits social media, it spreads far beyond the block it happened on. Strangers thousands of miles away witnessed Kevin's death. But for the people who knew him, it wasn't just a video clip. It was the day their lives changed forever. The next chapter in Kevin's story wasn't just grief. It was confusion, anger, and a desperate need for answers. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Who pulled that trigger, and why? Police reports from that evening confirmed what witnesses had already said. Kevin had been in his car when someone tried to snatch something from him. He stepped out, maybe to defend himself, maybe to stand his ground. That's when the fatal shot was fired. But beyond that moment, the details started to blur. People in the area had seen things, but not all were willing to talk. And in Chicago, silence is often its own form of survival. The community around South Austin wasn't shocked that another shooting had happened. Sadly, shootings happen there far too often. What made this one different was how raw and public it was. You didn't just hear about it from a neighbor or read it in the paper days later. You saw it as it happened. And that made people restless. Family members gathered at the scene not long after, some still clutching onto hope that maybe it wasn't real, maybe there was a mistake. But when police tape went up and the live stream stopped replaying, reality sank in. His cousin described it best. "I'm hurt. I'm angry. I just saw him." That anger wasn't just about losing Kevin, it was about the way he was lost. And here's where the frustration really started to build. Days after the shooting, there were still no arrests. The gunman was gone, vanished back into the city's shadows. Investigators were working, yes, but to Kevin's loved ones, it felt too slow, too quiet. How could someone be shot in broad daylight, in front of cameras, in front of witnesses, and still walk free? The South Austin community, already worn down by years of violence, carried the weight of another name to add to the list of lives cut short. But this time, the story traveled farther. Media outlets picked it up. Headlines ran, "Chicago man killed while live on Facebook." But even those headlines seemed too thin, too shallow for who Kevin was. To the people who loved him, he wasn't a Chicago man. He was Tugg. He was their cousin, their father, their friend. As if Kevin could be taken in such a bold and public way, who was really safe? How do you tell children that their dad was killed not just in the street, but in a way that strangers across the country watched unfold? It left the community questioning not just the violence itself, but what it meant for the future of Chicago's neighborhoods. The unanswered questions piled higher. Why Kevin? Was it really just about a snatch? Did the shooter know him? Was this random, or was there more behind it? And until those questions were answered, the tension only grew heavier. Here's where the story takes a darker turn. You'd think that because Kevin was live on Facebook, the video would hand over every answer. Clear face, clear motive, clear justice. But it didn't. The live stream captured the sound, the chaos, and Kevin's final moments, but not the shooter's face. Whoever pulled that trigger stayed in the shadows, hidden from the very audience that witnessed the crime unfold. And that's what made this case so haunting. The world saw Kevin's end, but no one saw the killer. Police were left with fragments, eyewitness accounts, a recovered chain marked Tugg, and a community buzzing with rumors. But without a clear suspect on camera, finding justice was never going to be quick. For Kevin's family, this was the breakthrough that felt like a betrayal. They had proof of his death, evidence of his pain, but not the one piece of truth they needed most. Who did it? Imagine carrying that weight, watching the video, hearing the shot, and knowing the person responsible could still be walking freely, blending back into the very streets Kevin called home. Kevin Tugg Watson, a 42-year-old father, cousin, and friend, had his life ended in a parking lot while the whole world unknowingly tuned in to watch. And yet, after all the noise, after all the headlines, the truth remains painfully thin. No face was seen on that live stream. No one has been held accountable. His family is left grieving, and Chicago is left asking the same question it's been asking for decades. When will it stop? And that's the part that gets under your skin. Because Kevin wasn't just a victim of a single bullet. He was a victim of a cycle. A cycle where people live in fear, where silence protects killers, and where justice moves so slowly, it almost feels like it's standing still. His story isn't just about what happened in those final minutes. It's about everything that was stolen. The birthdays he'll never celebrate, the family gatherings where his voice will never be heard, the kids who will grow up without their father's presence. Now, I want to ask you something. If you had been watching that Facebook Live in real time, what would you have done? Would you have turned it off, uncomfortable to see what was unfolding? Or would you have felt frozen, the way so many people did, powerless as a man's life slipped away on your screen? And here's another question. How many more Kevins will it take before something changes? Before communities find a way to stop the cycle of bullets and silence? Think about that for a moment. Let it sit with you. Because Kevin's life mattered. His story mattered. And if we don't remember him, if we don't say his name, then it's like he's been killed twice. Once by the bullet, and again by our silence. That's why I need you to do more than just watch. Hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon. Not for me, not for this channel, but for the people like Kevin who can't tell their own stories anymore. Here on Crime Bitz, we bring these stories back to light. We refuse to let them disappear. So ask yourself, what do you feel when you hear Kevin's story? Anger? Sadness? Fear? And more importantly, what will you do with that feeling? Because the next victim's story could be closer than you think.